The Usurper of Pride Rock is leading the charge. Watch your back when Scar is on the prowl. Simba's uncle is here to ruin everyone's plan with plots of his own. He counters healing, he has attacks that can't be reduced, and if you're on the VP space, he can usurp your victory space reign with only a movement card. Either way, he manipulates the victory spaces to spread his influence. Well, I was first in line until the little hairball was born. So, let's see what Scar brings to the table. Like most characters, Scar can move 2 spaces and hit for 2. Scar is the second character that brings a hand size of 3 to the table. Having a larger hand size brings a significant advantage, with more cards to choose from. His health stands at 8 points, but he's worth 6 VP. He's got a bad back, you know, so he can be a bit frail as a 6 VP character goes, but his offense, manipulation, and schemes can make up for this. Scar is the ultimate opportunist. He discards any movement card to move one character 1 space. If that character was on a VP space though, Scar can take their place on the VP spot. This makes it hard for your opponent to rely on VP spaces for their points. It's also a good way to move to the middle of the action to do some damage. Finally, it's a consistent way to move others around if you need a slight boost. Scar's subjects suffer under his oppressive rule. When Scar is on a VP space, each time that opponent heals, they heal by 1 less. Finally, someone can counter Ariel's medicinal reign of terror. It counters both Ariel's skill and upgrade, but if you're healing by more than 1, then some of it will still get through. Ultimately, Scar longs to control the Pride Lands. At the beginning of your end phase, you can discard an action card to do 2 indirect damage to each rival on a VP space. Typically, this instills enough fear that rivals stay away from the top. Otherwise, it's a quick and useful damage when you can catch them slipping. Now look, Zazu, you made me lose my lunch. But fortunately, he still has his cards. So, let's go through Scar's cards and break it down a little further. I'll be going from most common to least common, as some cards appear in the deck multiple times. The first 3 cards each appear twice. Yes, his teeth and ambitions are bad. Be prepared. With a range of 2, Scar does 1 damage to a rival, then move that rival 1 space. Then, if that rival's adjacent to one of your villains, that summoner then loses a VP. Most characters can't take away VP from their opponent, but Scar can do it multiple times. It's weak damage, but more than worth it to move someone and take their VP. Just remember that VP can't go negative, so only use it when your opponent has some. Scar and his teammates are ready to close in. Move 3 spaces, then move an ally 1 space, or 2 if that ally is a villain. If you haven't been paying attention, Scar likes being on villainous teams. Either way, it's a great way to set up your team to ambush the opponent. Put your allies on a VP space right before their turn. Maybe even use it on turn 1. Scar's moves aren't out in the open, he uses calculated movements. If Scar is on a VP space, that rival banishes a card, and Scar draws a card. Then Scar moves 3 spaces. You may be wondering why Scar would want to move if he's already on a VP space, but this allows him to switch to different spots and is obviously a card advantage. The rest of the cards only appear once each. When Scar is pushed to the edge, he can rely on his Cinder Swipe. It deals 2 indirect damage to each adjacent rival. If he's on the VP space, then this damage can't be reduced by abilities or effects. Want to get past tough? This is how you do it. It's important to clarify though that this can still be prevented by no punchbacks or invulnerable, just not reduced. Life's not fair, is it? Each non-token character on Scar's team does 1 damage to a rival adjacent to them. If at least one of those was done by a villain, then Scar gains a VP. This is great not only for times when you need a VP boost, but for if you need to spread out your damage as well. Gaston strong? Give him another chance to do 2 damage. Cauldronborn clogging the board? Wipe them all out. Scar may have the lion's share of the brains, but he still packs a vicious slash. Scar deals 3 damage to an adjacent rival, then move that rival 1 space. Finally, move Scar 1 space. Shockingly, this is both a movement and an action card. It's how Scar gets his biggest damage in a turn. Don't use this for anything other than a movement phase, or else you're wasting the opportunity for a 5 damage swing or better. Scar is most dangerous to his friends and foes when he's in the midst of a treacherous plot. Scar does 5 damage to an adjacent non-token character. That character summoner gains 3 VP. Scar gains VP if that character was on a VP space. Finally, if you KO your own ally, gain an action phase. There's a lot to this one. Typically, you can use this on your own allies. If your character was about to get KO'd without giving away the game, go ahead and make that sacrifice to get an extra 3 or 4 VP. You'll still get an attack afterwards. Or maybe you need a big swing on an opponent that's on a VP space, and it's worth giving that opponent 3 VP to get you over the edge. This card is unique, but game-changing. So, is Scar the true king, or is he a monkey's uncle? Scar is a character that should not be played like the others. Scar doesn't run in expecting the trade hits to come out on top. He plots, finds different ways to win, and sacrifices anyone that's in his way. Scar's cards give him the tools to gain or lose up to 6 VP through means that aren't KOs. Taking advantage of that is how you come out on top. Let your opponent get to the VP space first, then attack them with Scar's allies. Finally, let Scar follow up with Life's Not Fair or Be Prepared. Most of Scar's big turns will either involve Vicious Slash to get to 5+ damage, or by taking over some VP spaces for him and his allies. Still, Scar has an issue that's similar to Maleficent. They each want to be on the VP space, but don't have the health to stay there. The way that Scar deals with this is by discouraging your opponent from being on the VP spaces. His skill, upgrade, and some of his abilities penalize his rivals for being on that space. So, the way Scar deals with this is by ensuring that if he can't be on top, then no one can. Scar's Constant is a tool that finally puts the brakes on Ariel's healing. Sure, there are other characters that can heal, but Ariel was particularly so good because of her consistent healing, and Scar can cancel some of that out when he gets on the VP spaces. He's definitely worth using as a counter pick. Like with Facilier, there's a huge benefit to having an extra card in your hand. Rolling with 7 or even 8 cards in your hand gives you so many options to work with and should not be underestimated. I talked about this a little bit, but Scar's biggest turn comes from his treacherous plot. I know it goes against many of your instincts to attack your allies, but let's say you're tied 10-10 with both Scar's ally and enemy at low health. With one card, this allows you to take out your own character, giving up some VP that was going to be given up anyway, but gaining 3 to 4 VP in return, but also having the additional action phase to knock out your weakened opponent as well, potentially getting to 20 VP all at once. These are the type of turns that make Scar a great last turn character. Place him at the end of the round and watch him subvert your opponent's endgame. Scar epitomizes one of my TV favorite lines: "You come at the king, you best not miss." Scar epitomizes one of my favorite TV lines: "You come at the king, you best not miss." Scar's strengths lie in the fact that Scar has multiple unique ways to gain VP and should be used to eke out a victory under your opponent's nose. Everyone is a pawn on Scar's chessboard, and anyone can get moved or taken out to further his ends. Extra damage to enemies on the spaces, moving people off the spaces, gaining abilities when he's on them, Scar's ambition knows no limits. Scar's weaknesses can cost him the thrones of this game. 8 HP is frail for a 6 VP character, so don't let him be an easy target. Scar is so concerned with finding alternative ways to win through VP and VP spaces that at times he can be a little more inconsistent on offense. Though this isn't a true weakness, Scar is easy to use but hard to master. Like Maleficent, timing and positioning are the keys to success. Scar likes villains, plain and simple. Now, he can work with others as well, but half of his cards have an extra benefit when working with a villain. Scar needs someone who can either take damage for Scar or do most of the damage for him. His hyena, if you will. Really, if your allies can hold their own, then Scar can put your team over the top. Sure, that's easier said than done, but it's still true. So who's going to be joining Scar's pack? Maleficent, Scar, Sully. This team allows Scar to be more straightforward than usual. Mal and Scar want to control the middle while Sully protects them. If that happens, you're going to slowly start snowballing points and benefits until you run away with things. There's 2 primary catches though. This doesn't make very good use of Maleficent's upgrade, and if Sully isn't taunted or toughed, then the frailty of this team can stand out. Feel free to replace Sully with Facilier here if you want more magical synergy and an 8-card hand. But then, the team's going to be more about disruption than controlling the offensive or defensive flow. Horned King, Scar, and Mother Gothel. This is the villain team that wants to disrupt your ability to upgrade and use VP points normally. The Horned King and Scar typically work well together, as Scar fuels the Cauldronborn, and the Cauldronborn can keep Scar safe. Between Gothel and the Horned King, your opponent should have a lot of banished cards by the end of this game. The problem is, this is an offensively hindered team that doesn't want to trade hits. There is no primary damage dealer unless you can upgrade Horned King, so it's a very unconventional team. Still, under the right circumstances, it can lead to minimal options for your opponent. So that's our breakdown of Scar. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to stick around for the next one, but until then, long live the king. See you next time.